Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Daisel. I'm from the Unisa Directorate for Counselling and Career Development. A very warm welcome to all of you who have joined us this afternoon. This afternoon, we're talking about getting the job, interview skills. And with me, I've got my colleagues, Mrs. Mandu Makanya, as well as Becky Zorbe, who will also be doing parts of the program with me. So just some practical arrangements. You would have noted that your cameras and microphones are disabled for now, but we will have a live Q&A session at the end of the presentation, during which you are welcome to unmute and ask your questions live. During the session, you are welcome to post any questions you have in the chat. I've also shared all the questions that you submitted as you were registering for the event with our presenter, so she will also cover some of the questions that were asked beforehand. Just a request in the chat that you don't share any personal information, so that would be things like your cell phone number, for example, just so that we can protect your privacy. So on our program this afternoon, I'm doing the welcome now. Then I will ask Mrs. Mandu Makanya to do the introduction to the speaker for us. Then Michelle Dobson from PNET will be presenting about getting the job interview skills, followed by the Q&A session. And then at around 1:15, we will be done with the presentation and the session. But it would depend on whether we have attended to all your questions. So please sit back and relax, but also make notes as you're listening. And don't forget to put your questions in the chat. I just saw a notification coming up that somebody has said there's something wrong with the sound. If you can't hear or see the presentation, I've got the program on the screen now. It would be a good idea for you just to leave the meeting and rejoin again, so that the network connection is just re-established. That might help. Thank you very much, Mrs. Makanya.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. She is the head of brands for SA On Group Africa, operating as PNET and Career Junction. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give a warm welcome to our speaker, Michelle Dobson. Michelle, we welcome you to our online or to our virtual stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here again. Okay, let me just share my presentation and then we can crack on. Okay, and then you'll just interrupt me if there's anything that needs to be asked. Like, I'm not going to be able to see the chat while I'm presenting in presentation mode. Yeah, so just Elisa, if you can, or Hazel, if you can just keep me honest and shout out if there's something I need to stop or answer or whatever it is.
Will do so. Thanks, Michelle.
Perfect. Good, yes. So as was introduced, my name is Michelle Dobson. I am head of brands for both PNET and Career Junction. Both of these online platforms are owned by a company called the Stepstone Group, based in Germany. Today, we're going to chat specifically from a PNET perspective, and we're going to talk about how to ace your next interview. And thank you, everyone that did send through those questions as part of the registration process. Some really, really nice information that's going to come through as a result of the questions that you've posed. So thank you for that. Just a little bit about me. I have that 20 plus is growing. It's probably 27 years at the moment. Experience in developing, growing and managing brands. I've had the good fortune of working for some really awesome top global and local brands, and I ran a digital marketing agency for a couple of years, after which I moved into my own business around brand strategy and digital marketing strategy. And then I always like to talk about, especially when I'm presenting as PNET, the fact that I was actually found on the PNET platform and headhunted through my profile on the PNET platform, where I joined the business in September 2021 as head of brands. And I've recruited people my entire career. So given the sort of the knowledge, well, As a job seeker myself, having been through the interview process a good few times in my 27 years, as well as having recruited people my entire career, coupled with the information that we receive from our recruiters on a ground level, I've been able to put this content together, which will hopefully give you some guidance and some information and some insights. There is a lot of information when we talk about the interview process. So I do encourage you, as we said, we'll get to those Q&As at the end, some really lovely questions coming through there. But, you know, Google is your friend. So if there's a topic that you want to embellish a bit more, or you want to dive deeper into, there is so much content available on Google. Obviously, you know, it can be overwhelming. But if there are particular things that you want to deep dive into that we're not going to get a chance to talk about today, make a note and go and Google it. I'll give you the framework, so you know you at least know what you're looking at when you receive that information, or you're looking through the Google search results. But yeah, there just is so much when it comes to the interview process that I would love to share. So let's crack on. So before we jump into that, just to talk a little bit about who is PNet and what we do. So we're often mistaken for a recruitment agency, but we're really the technology enabler, the platform or the technology that connects a recruiter with a job seeker. So recruiters will either post their vacancies live on our platform, or they will, you know, in my case, and the way that I was found on the PNet platform, they'll proactively headhunt the database if you've made your profile visible and searchable. And then job seekers will come and either sign up for job alerts or, you know, browse the live jobs or create their profile and make it searchable, so that the technology is able to match a recruiter's vacancy with what a job seeker is looking for. So we call it the smart matching technology. And as I say, it's essentially a tech platform that helps find good quality matches between job seekers and their vacancies and recruiters' vacancies. The workshop rules are very easy. Be present. Yeah, so I encourage you to turn your phones off or turn them upside down. Ask questions. I've said, yeah, type the questions on the Q&A, but as Lisa said when she introduced us, maybe just make a note of it. And when we get to the live Q&A session at the end, we'll see if your questions haven't been covered, then we will jump into those as well. So just to talk about how I've kind of constructed the presentation. No surprises. So we're going to talk about what you should be doing before your interview, during your interview, and after your interview. And you'll see, based on the time factor that I've allocated, before is where the majority of the information sits. That's where we're going to talk the most. And it all basically boils down to preparation. Getting yourself as ready for that interview as you possibly can, so that if there are any surprises, any tricky questions that come up that you weren't expecting, it's not going to throw you off completely. You've done, 80-90% of the groundwork and the prep, and then it's just a matter of turning up and being switched on for that interview. So diving into before, and I'm just going to start my stopwatch here, otherwise I can ramble on forever. So before the interview, we talk about what is the purpose of a job interview. And a lot of the time, we think it's very obvious that it's a meet and greet basically between a recruiter or a prospective employer and a job seeker. But it is actually so much more than a meet and greet. It's an opportunity for the job seeker to answer questions that will highlight their skills, their qualifications, explain how suitable they are for the job and why they believe that they're the right candidate. And it's also for the interviewer to find out if the job and the candidates are a good fit. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that throughout this session. It's not only about skills and qualifications, it's also about that culture fit or that personality fit or that values alignment when it comes to matching a vacancy with the job seeker. We also forget that it's an opportunity for the job seeker to find out whether they think the company is a good fit for them. Oftentimes it's not just about the extent to which you meet that list of requirements, but do you have a good feeling about that company? Is it an industry that that you believe you can work in, that you're comfortable working in, that you can get behind and feel positive and feel good about? So it is a two-way conversation where job seeker and interviewer are sussing each other out to understand whether this is going to be a good working relationship moving forward. It's always a good idea to understand that the interview process happens in various phases. The interview stages generally start with a video or a phone call, and that's done mostly by the recruiter. And by recruiter, I mean it's usually an HR personnel or somebody that's responsible for the talent acquisition process or the recruitment process in the business. So that person wouldn't necessarily know the technical details of what the role is going to entail, but they almost do like a screening process to understand, who you are, what your career path has been, what your career plans are moving forward, what is your current situation. So, have you recently graduated? Are you trying to move out of a particular role? If so, why? What was your motivation to apply? And then they'll do, for the hiring manager, they'll almost do, as I say, that screening process or that checklist process. Do you have the basic skills and the experience, the ones that the recruiter at the hiring manager would have said are not negotiables? Are your salary expectations aligned? And at this part of the interview, talking about salary is very broad. And the HR person or the recruiter at this stage would have just been given a range that they want to work in to make sure you're not completely over or under that salary mark. There is always an opportunity to talk salary and to negotiate salary when you're actually talking to the hiring manager that's going to be potentially your manager in the new role. And then the recruiter at this stage will also talk you through the application process. So, if you meet those minimum criteria and the salaries are all aligned or the salary range is aligned, then your next phase would invariably be with your hiring manager. And this is what we call the technical interview. So sometimes this involves peers. As a brand marketer, I'm usually interviewed by a business manager. I currently report into our CEO. And he's not a marketer. He's a accountant by trade, a chartered accountant by trade. So he wouldn't necessarily know, the technical answers to my questions. So when I was interviewed for this particular role at PNet, we had one of the members of the marketing team present in that interview, as well as the sales director, a department that I work very closely with. So sometimes there will be additional people in that interview, but they really want to find out, are you able to perform the function and meet the requirements of the job? So this will be where we spend a lot or the most of our time in terms of our preparation. And sometimes we're given a task to complete at home or during the interview. When I interviewed for Adidas, over a decade ago, at that stage, they were trying to increase their female following and female athletes in the business. So my task in the interview was to draw up a rough strategy to attract this particular female audience aged 18 to 25. So they want to see, obviously I didn't have the information that I needed about the business, but they just want to see, how do you think, do you understand the technical requirements of the position? And then lastly, generally, sometimes there's 2 or 3 technical interviews, but generally, if you pass the technical interview and the team is comfortable that you have the requirements to meet the job, then you would usually I've called it the culture fit stage, but it's generally just getting a sense from other people in the business of how you are aligned to the company in terms of your personality, your behaviors, the company values, etc. Sometimes they'll look at things like, how did you handle situations in the past? How do you feel about teamwork, conflict management, adaptability? How flexible are you? Your learning agility, are you able to catch on quickly with certain things? We work PNET essentially works in a tech environment. Even though we're in the online recruitment space, we are a tech platform. So understanding and catching on to technology is really important for anybody who's thinking of moving into the business. How do you deal with feedback? How comfortable are you giving feedback? So more about your behavior and less about the requirements or the specifications to actually do the work itself. This is a famous quote from, well, it's a famous quote. I don't think Bobby Unser is that famous, but he's an Indy racing car driver, or was an Indy racing car driver. And he always used to talk about how his success is a combination of being prepared and then having the right opportunity presented. Success is where preparation and opportunity meet. So being invited for an interview is almost half of the battle won. It really is an awesome opportunity to then adequately prepare for that interview and put your best foot forward when it comes to that process. The first thing you would do when it comes to when you know you've secured that interview is go and do some research. So the obvious place is to start with the company. Who are they? It might be a well-known brand, but you might want to dive a little bit deeper into, what their strategies are about, who their audiences are, who they market to, what their product is, how they sell their product or service. And then also don't forget to research the interviewer. So, it's a good old LinkedIn stalk that can help you with that. If it's a big business and they've got lots of, media coverage and press releases and interviews, doing a Google search under the interviewer's name will also probably deliver some results. It's always good to understand not only the company that you're interviewing for, but who's actually going to be managing that interview itself. You might even find you've got some common ground that you can bring into that interview. So don't forget to research the company as well as the interviewer. The website is obviously a really good place to start. It'll give you an indication of the type of work that they do. You might get some insights into the culture of that business. As I say, the audiences and who they target, who they sell their products and services to. Social media pages are also a good way to research. Usually your social media pages would talk a little bit more about the culture. So a website tends to be almost like an online brochure or an online shop for a particular company or brand, whereas your social media pages will give you a very interesting insight into some of the behind the scenes of that company. They may talk about sponsorships or corporate social investment activities that they're involved in. They might share some internal functions where you can get a sense of the things that they're involved in. You can also get a sense of what people wear to work. So that's important when it comes to your interview later down the line. And then, as I said, Googling articles, press releases, the history of the company, whether they've, seen any major growth over the last couple of years or decades, any projects that they're currently involved in. Excuse me. You can also pick up red flags through Google. I remember being invited for an interview with a very well-known fast food retailer outlet. And when I Googled just to see what kind of information they'd shared with the press, there was a lot of negative information in Google about the chairman of the business. And yeah, I just got a really bad feeling about the kind of person or the kind of culture I would be working within. And as a result, declined that interview. If you can talk to current employees, this isn't as easy, but if you have, potentially been given a referral or somebody that works there, if you can talk to current employees about all of these topics, that'll really give you some good insights that, another candidate might not have. Comparing your skills to the job ad is a really, really critical component of preparing for the interview. A lot of the time I've got an example here of a job ad that we would have had up for PNET to hire a salesperson, I don't know what we call them, account executive. But so people often get a sense of, yeah, maybe I'm a 60% match or a 70% match, but I think going through the detail of every single item that's been listed in the job spec, writing a job spec is quite a tricky process. And if a particular piece of information has made it into the job spec, then it's very, very clear that that is something that is relevant to address in your interview. So, for example, if we look here at the desired experience and qualification, okay, driver's license is either you like, yes, I have one, yes, no, I don't, or I have a reliable vehicle, I don't. If they've asked you to have a minimum of 1 to 3 years experience with a proven track record, talk to, prepare what your 1 to 3 years experience is. So you'll talk through your career history, or if you're, a graduate, you'll talk through your field of study and what's interested you about that field of study. But come prepared to talk through your proven track record. What have you actually done in the businesses that you've worked for previously? Or if you're a graduate and you don't yet have a proven track record, you need to be able to demonstrate that you understand what measurements and metrics you would need to perform in a sales function. Excellent telephone skills, talk to where you've had those telephone skills. Have you done any telephone or call center training? Fourth last bullet point there, any previous experience on a CRM system? That would be a customer relationship management system. So you need to be able to address every single point that appears in that job description. And if you and understand what you're going to say if you don't meet the requirement. So if you don't have any previous experience on the CRM system, that's absolutely fine. They're saying that it's beneficial, it's not a non-negotiable. But you might then want to talk to the fact that you've gone and done some research around the different CRM programs, or you would be really keen to take on a Udemy course about a particular CRM platform. So don't just ignore the fact that that bullet point exists in the job spec. If you don't meet the requirement, address it and address any gaps. If you're missing something, explain how you'll be competent in the role without it. A job spec can be a very scary, a very kind of scary piece of content to look at. It would basically be a wish list by a recruiter. So it's very, 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 very seldom that somebody meets a job spec 100%. But if somebody meets a job spec 70%, that's a really good match, considering a job spec would be an absolute wish list of all the requirements you want somebody to meet. However, if you're missing that 30%, there might be something within that 30% that is absolutely critical to the role, in which case you're probably not going to move forward, or in which case you probably wouldn't have got the interview in the first place. So chances are, if you've got to the interview phase, you are already considered to be a good match. But if you are missing something, like here, the ability to function independently, the second last bullet point, with high levels of responsibility and accountability, if you have never worked remotely before, but this is now a hybrid job, talk to how you would be able to work independently, stay self-motivated, things like that. So comparing your skills to the job ad and literally writing down against every single point where you do and don't meet the criteria, and how you're going to explain where you don't, is absolute gold when it comes to that preparation. As I said earlier, if you then get any curveballs in the meeting, in the interview, which chances are very good that will happen, you are at least prepared for 80% of that interview, and comfortable to talk through your responses. Now, I always say practice your anecdotes. Your anecdotes are those little stories that you get to tell along the way. If you have a specific accomplishment that displays the skills that are required. So, if you've got, for example, in that job spec we looked at now, cold calling was a requirement. If you've got cold calling skills and you've been able to convert customers as a salesperson through your cold calling, make sure you've practiced your anecdote around that. What is the story you're going to tell? The time you made a mistake and the important lesson that you learned, that's often a question that comes up in interviews, is, talk through the moment, the time that you made a mistake, but you learned from it. So try and pick something from early on in your career, and the lesson that you learned and how that lesson helped you, gain more experience or be better at your role moving forward. How you handled the difficult situation, also a great interview question from recruiters. And if you haven't practiced talking through these kind of responses, that can really throw you off. If you had a difficult situation where, I'm trying to think of a difficult situation where, I don't know, you had to, well, I don't know, maybe you didn't deliver something on time, but it wasn't your fault. So practice your story. Don't blame the other person. Maybe it wasn't your fault, but introducing blame in an interview situation is not going to work in your favor. Rather focus on how you became aware of that situation and what you did to improve it, how you then handle that situation, and the solution that you provided to be able to move forward. What was that time you went above and beyond? What was required of you, and how did you go beyond? That time you had a disagreement with your boss, how did you reach that understanding? Again, don't spend time talking about what that disagreement is. Talk about how you understood the situation and how you focused on reaching a mutual understanding that allowed you to, as I say, be better at your job, move forward, etc. And always practice these anecdotes out loud, say, thinking something in your head or writing it down on a piece of paper or typing it up on your computer. It's very different to when you are actually talking through something. Sometimes you can trip up on words or a combination of words that you weren't aware of because you hadn't been saying the words out loud. So always try and practice as much as you can out loud when it comes to the interview preparation. And then list questions that you might be asked, looking at those anecdotes there's already a couple of questions that we know are going to be asked. Looking at the Q&As that you sent through as part of your registration for this session, the usual, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Tell me a bit about yourself. Why are you applying for this job? Make a list of all those questions and write down your answers to each one. And as I say, practice answering them out loud. Talk to yourself in the mirror. Be weird. It really is going to help you get comfortable with the content of talking through those the responses to those questions. And also, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just an opportunity for the interviewer to find out whether you're suitable for the job. It's an opportunity for you to find out whether you want the job, whether you want to work for this company, whether you feel that it's a good fit for you in terms of the technical skills, learning and development moving forward, career growth, the people, the culture. But when you are writing down those questions and asking those questions in the forum, don't ask for information that can be easily found online. So, for example, don't ask like, well, who is your target market? Because that will show that you haven't done your very, very basic research in preparation for that interview. So I often get asked, I see it did come through in the Q&As that were submitted that Lisa sent through, is what questions do you ask? You don't want to sit there, as I say, with a mouthful of teeth at the end of the interview when they say, well, do you have any questions? Surely do have questions, but you also want them to be smart questions. You want them to, as I say, not be questions that are asked, that are answered through the research you've done. So these topics that I'm showing here on the screen are and this is where I say, if you are interested in anything further around this, there are 10, 15 questions you can ask for each of these topics. I've just highlighted a couple as we go through. So when it comes to your role, you'll know what the role's about from your job interview, but do you know which strategic function the department reports into? It's always for me as a brand marketer, it's always a question I ask, because marketing can be very misconstrued in various businesses. So I always want to understand, is marketing seen as a strategic function of the business, or is it seen as a sales support function, which are two very, very different roles, and my interest in those jobs would be very different as a result of the response. Which departments would I be working closely with? Also a question, I always know I'm going to be working closely with the sales team, but it's a great question to ask to understand, where does your role and the department you'll be working for fit into the business? In terms of the onboarding, what would my first week at work look like? It'll give you a sense of how prepared they are to, not upskill you, but to give you the information and the training that you need to get up and running as soon as possible, and not kind of throwing you in the deep end. Sometimes being thrown in the deep end is also good and the best way to learn, but it is interesting to understand, do they have an induction process that that'll help you entrench and add value quicker? The interviewer, you can pose questions to them. What do you enjoy about working for this company? Can you talk me through your typical work day? In terms of management style, how is feedback incorporated into your day-to-day operations? How do leaders encourage employees to ask questions? Do they have forums? Do they have regular town hall meetings? How often do the managers meet with their teams? In terms of company culture, how would you describe the work environment? The company's reputation. What are the biggest problems? How are you overcoming these problems? In terms of performance, how involved are employees in structuring their own goals and tasks? How often do you evaluate employees' performance? How often are those conversations happening between manager and between your line manager and yourself? And that gives you a good idea of how easily you'll be able to remedy if you're not performing, rather than waiting a year down the line and understanding that somebody's not comfortable with what you've been doing. Ask about your team, your co-workers. What's the structure of the team? What does the organogram of the company look like? Can you tell me something about the people I'll be working with? As a manager, that's always something I'm very interested in, and it's always a question that delivers some interesting feedback as to who are your shining stars in the team? What are the challenges that you're going to be walking into as a manager? Is there a supplier network that you'll be working with? Which functions are in-house and which are outsourced? Again, a really important question for me as a marketer is, does the business have an advertising agency on board, or would that creativity need to come from myself and the in-house team? What are the opportunities for growth? What type of upskilling does the company offer? Do you have a mentorship system in place? I literally cherry-picked, maybe, as I said, 2 of between 10 and 15 questions for each of these topics. And then an obvious one to ask right at the end, if the interviewer hasn't explained to you what the next step is in the interview process, absolutely feel free to ask. I think it also came through in the Q&As that you sent through, is, how comfortable is it, or is it taboo for me to ask what the next step in the interview process is? Absolutely not. It shows that you're keen. It shows that you're interested. It shows that you're passionate about the process. So by all means, ask the interviewer what the next steps are going to be. And then talking a little bit about dress code. I'm not going to talk too much about this. Again, Google has a wealth of information about dress codes for interviews, but the long and the short of it is, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So always overdress than underdress. And I know the question often gets asked, what if you are applying for, and it happens within a marketing function, especially a creative function, if you're applying for a role at an advertising agency, or you're going to be a writer or a content creator, or a social media manager, it's often a creative function. You can be creative once you've landed the job. Still consider that you want to come across as professional and classic. Always, if you're unsure, always dress smarter than the job entails. If you don't know and you're not sure, then rather ask if the recruiters, put you onto the interview, ask the recruiter what would be an appropriate dress code. Drive past the offices, at start or in or closing time, and see what people are wearing coming in and out, and or look online. As I say, social media, you'll often see some internal events or activities, but always remember that those people have been there for a while. They've got that job. So always err on the side of caution and wear some sort of power suit or power interview outfit. But make sure you feel comfortable in the clothes that you are in. As I said, you're going to get a couple of curveball questions. It's highly, highly likely. You don't want your, to be feeling uneasy in what you're wearing. Or, often it's for ladies, it's the time that they wear high heels. Don't wear, massive 6-inch high heels if you can't walk in them. You can feel confident in little kitty heels, but just make sure that you feel comfortable and confident in whatever you're wearing. Don't over accessorize, probably more for the ladies than for the guys. But yeah, keep it classic, keep it subdued, again, if it's a creative role or creative function, there is an opportunity to, wear a set of beautiful earrings, but rather err on the side of caution for this one, and you can share your personality, once you've landed the job and you're starting to entrench in the company. Be well groomed. It's a big one. People arrive for interviews in crazy conditions, haven't brushed their hair, broken glasses. Just look professional. So I've said, I'm not going to go through this in too much detail, because I'd rather get to some of the more important content. But looking at this lady, I've said if she was, interviewing for this sales position that we looked at earlier, would she be a yes or a no? And often I'd give, the audience a chance to reflect and give their opinion. I'm just going to crack on. She looks absolutely beautiful, but the answer is no. Her skirt is far too high. She looks pretty sexy, and sexy is good, but not for your interview and not for work. So rather err on the side of caution. Have a classic, pencil skirt that sits on your knees. Again, yes or no? She looks really lovely, looks professional, 100% yes. Avoid looking too casual. For ladies, don't have your top button down too low, or definitely no jeans, no denim anywhere near an interview, for both ladies and guys. Just make sure, if you are going to wear a button collar up shirt, it's crisp and professional. Some other tips for ladies, never, and I mean, this lady on the left-hand side I think she's an editor for a fashion magazine. She looks absolutely gorgeous, but you do never wear anything that is strapless for an interview. Same with halter necks. Never show your midriff. The third picture there, she looks beautiful in those shorts, and she's dressed them up with some lovely heels, but don't wear shorts. And again, on the right-hand side there, never wear a crop top or show too much skin. For the guys, as I said, don't wear jeans, don't wear t-shirts. All of these guys look amazing. They look really, really cool, really professional. On the right-hand side there, don't wear trainers. You can pull that off once you've landed the job, but you want to go in there as professional as possible when you're still trying to secure the job. And then empower yourself, So this also came through in the Q&As. I was very pleased to see is, the questions were asked around how do I bring across this positivity and this confidence? This is the way. Practice a firm handshake, firm but not sore. Don't crush the person's hand. Shake people's hands at home. This wasn't a popular slide during COVID, but practice a firm handshake, a confident handshake, good posture, attentive body language. All of those things it'll come across as confident, and that'll mirror off the recruiter during that interview process as well. If you need a little bit of self-confidence, come up with a mantra that is really personal to you, and then on the way to your interview, say that mantra over and over and over again. No matter what, I will do my best. I deserve everything I desire. I'm confident and I value myself. The power of positive thinking and the power of spoken mantras is really sounds a bit hippie, but it really is underrated. And then getting enough rest and stay healthy, So one excellent tactic about an interview or preparing for an interview is visualization. And we hear it a lot with sports people, that are visualizing going through a race, and they're getting to the start, and before the start they've put this outfit on, and they are now in the starting blocks, and their mind is on a particular thing. Visualize yourself getting ready for that interview, wearing that power suit, saying your mantra on the way to your interview, meeting the recruiter, and acing that interview. Visualization is a very, very, very powerful tool. Eating well is also powerful. Make sure that you've got wholesome, healthy meals leading up to the interview. I know this is often forgotten, and I'm the worst to talk about this because I just absolutely hate cooking. But eating a wholesome, healthy meal can really make you feel good. And when you feel good and you're healthy, all the rest will follow. That confidence, that that strong body posture. And get plenty of rest. That goes without saying the night before. If you're an anxious person, use breathing techniques or meditation the morning of the interview. So give yourself that time and that space to get to the interview on time, to maybe stand outside the office block for 10 minutes while you just take deep breaths. Don't land up rushing to the interview and being completely stressed out before you've even started with those curveballs that you can expect. And then your final planning, do you know how you're going to get there? If you're driving, how long is it expected to take? Depending what time of the day, what kind of traffic are you likely to encounter? Do you have the correct contact details? Do you know if you're catching a taxi, where you're going to catch that taxi from and what that process looks like? What are you going to take with you? Do you have to take a portfolio? Do you have printouts of your CV? So do all of that extra planning. As I say, the more you can prepare for the known, the less scary that 10-15% of unknown will be. Okay, and then during the interview, as I said earlier, it's important to know where you are in that interview. Which stage are you in? Because that's going to help you with the amount of preparation you need to do, and and also how technical those answers, your questions need to be. As I said, the middle part is usually the technical interview, is usually where we do our most preparation. But you also, when it comes to personality, values, alignment, your culture fit is important. So having done the research around the company's values and things that they stand for, their mission, their values, understanding that for your third or for your culture fit or behavioral interview is also very important. And I know lots of questions in the Q&A about this, that dreaded "tell me a bit about yourself" part. So it's actually not that complicated. The rules are to basically speak for no more than 2 to 3 minutes. And I'm going to take you through my blurb that I usually go through, which takes about 2.5 minutes. And you can see even you'll hear me speaking for 2.5 minutes sounds like a really long time. So, but there's a lot of information to get across, especially, with my 27 years work experience. It's obviously easier if you've got less to talk through, but there's some key bits of information that you'll want to get across in that process. So you want to talk about your professional journey. As always, keep out your personal details. Don't talk about children, marital status, definitely not about politics or religion, the big no-nos. Just keep it professional and about your career journey. And if you've got an opportunity to mention your experience and your skills relative to the position while you're talking through that professional journey, even better. So as with everything up until this point, preparing your responses and practicing those responses out loud is going to be a critical part of preparing for this question as well. If you're changing industries, then instead of waiting for the interviewer to ask about, well, how are you going to take skills that you've learned from industry A into industry B, make sure your introduction covers that you're aware that that there's a change happening and that you've got these transferable skills that you're going to bring with you to the new industry. And if you're entering the job market, focus on qualifications and your casual or volunteer work experience. So as I mentioned, I can talk easily for 10 minutes. Nobody wants to hear me talk for 10 minutes. 2 to 3 is the max. But even just talking through my career history, it would take a while. If you're just entering the job market, talk about your qualifications. You want to choose a starting point, and then highlight your experiences and any key accomplishments, and then explain your current situation and why you're looking to move into this particular role. So if you're a recent graduate, mention that you've just graduated, explain why you chose this particular career path or this particular field of study. So that'll show a passion for the industry or a passion for the sector, perhaps a passion for that particular company. And it's also a good idea, as I said on the earlier slide, if you do have any casual or volunteer work, it may not be relevant to the role that you're applying for. If you're applying for a, I don't know, a software developer role in IT, and you come from a history of studying and, you know, perhaps pet sitting while you were studying, pet sitting is not going to be relative to your software development career, but it will have taught you some key skills. And skills are absolutely important when it comes to well, your CV, leading up to and past your interview process, alongside your qualifications. So if you learned time management and responsibility through your pet sitting jobs or pairing, or, you know, or perhaps you worked at a shopping mall on the weekends, what are the skills that you developed through that volunteer work or that casual work that will make you a better employee going into the world of work? If you've got 1 to 8 years experience, start with when you graduated and then work through your experience since then. If you've got sort of from 8 years up, you're going to find a midpoint in your career. You know, at this stage of my career, nobody cares what I did in 1996. I can absolutely assure you it was, especially in marketing, such a different world. So find your midpoint career that's going to be relevant to what you're applying for, and talk about your skills and qualifications from that point onwards. Once you've got your starting point, you're going to talk through your key accomplishments, what you've done, the skills that you've learned, any key career moves that you've made. If you know there's going to be a question about a particular gap, or, you know, about leaving a particular role, make sure you introduce that subject in your tell me a bit about yourself blurb, rather than waiting for the recruiter to pick up, wait a minute, there was a 1 year gap there. What did you do in that gap? Rather just address it in your overview. And as I say, always try and tie in what you're elaborating on here with the job that you're interviewing for. So make sure that it's relevant. As I said, if you're talking about pet sitting here, you know, it's going to be 1 or 2 sentences. But if you are talking about your skills that you've learned, you know, through the last 8 years of working, make sure you're weaving in your what the tasks are, or what you learned, or anything that's going to help you meet the requirements for that particular job. And then explain your current situation. So, you know, why a recruiter will always ask you why you want to leave. So beat them to it. Why do you want to leave a particular job if you're already employed? If you're just entering the job market now, you want to explain why you've applied for this particular job, you know, what's interested you or attracted you to the role or the company, and what are you looking for in terms of your career path or your career trajectory moving forward. So I'm going to read my blurb. You can maybe don't even watch the screen. It will be up on the screen afterwards. But if you want to hear how long my 2 minutes, 25 seconds or whatever it is takes, it does sound like a lot of information. So you want to make sure that you've really practiced this. You don't want to ramble, and it has to be relevant information that you're bringing across. So my starting point, I always say, after matriculating in 1994, I took a gap year overseas where I did odd jobs across the UK. When I returned, I studied travel and tourism and started at Comair Limited, working in the British Airways call centre, where I discovered brand marketing purely by chance. Highlighting my experience and my accomplishments. So here I say I worked my way to brand manager, then marketing manager. And after 9 years at Comair, I moved to Cell C in a specialist loyalty program role. I was later seconded to the Red Bull mobile team to project manage a joint venture with Red Bull Media House in Austria. Shortly after Red Bull Mobile launched, and after 7 years at Cell C, I moved to Cape Town and joined Adidas as their senior brand marketer, looking after traditional brand marketing functions like public relations, advertising, digital marketing, and sponsorships. I joined the business at a time when they were focused on gaining market share in Gauteng, which sent me back to Joburg frequently. So when I was headhunted by my previous Cell C manager over a year later to join RCS, I left Adidas and took on the role of marketing manager for RCS's business division, where I was exposed to digital performance marketing for the first time. After 3 years at RCS, I wanted to expand my knowledge around performance marketing, and I leapt at the opportunity when RCS's digital agency, Lumen, asked me to create and head up a client services division for them. They lost the RCS account when RCS was bought out by a European bank and forced to use their global digital agency. Unfortunately, the business model for Lumen wasn't sustainable without the RCS revenue, so we closed doors in 2018. I then ran my own business for a few years, developing brand strategies and digital marketing, until PNet contacted me in 2021 to join their business as head of brands for their online recruitment platform, focusing on brand development with both customers and job seekers. I created a short course in digital communications during lockdown, which I run online twice a year with a local university. And then to conclude, I'm keen to move into a role that capitalizes on my big brand experience in a sector that's stable and growing, where marketing is considered a strategic function of the business, and where I will be exposed to digital marketing, metrics, and measurement to ensure that I remain relevant as a marketer. So that is a lot of information. It especially looks like a lot of information when it's written down, but there are key things that I've highlighted here that, you know, it's been crafted with a lot of care and consideration. So it automatically tells, you know, when I'm matriculated and how long I've been in the working market. It addresses my gap year. So, you know, in the early stage of my career, I would just say, I would go from matric to this is my first job. And then the first question that people would come back with is, wait a minute, where were you for that year? So then I started building that into my story. And then I talk about how I moved into brand marketing, you know, the fact that brand marketing is kind of where my career is at now. That first sentence under highlight experience and accomplishments, I worked my way to brand manager, then marketing manager. That basically covers 9 years of my career at Commie in that one sentence, because as I said, it was, you know, it was from 1994 to, I don't know, can't do the maths, 2003. It's so far past that it's not going to be relevant to my career moves at this stage. But then I talk about how I moved into Celsi as a loyalty program, to work on loyalty programs, which is very different from brand marketing. So it's a skill that I've added to my portfolio. I talk about Red Bull Mobile because it's always good, you know, in my space to talk about big brands. And then I talk about project management. So that's another skill that I've added to my portfolio. I talk about 7 years, moved to Cape Town. So that explains why I left Celsi. And then I'll also go on to explain why I've left Adidas. That's also a question I get asked all the time, is why would you, if you work for Adidas, why would you go and work for a credit and insurance company? So I address that in my blurb. I don't wait for them to make up their own, you know, the recruiter to make up their own information and fill the gap as to like, oh, things didn't work out at Adidas. I wonder what happened there. So I address that reason that I left. And then I also addressed the reason that I was, you know, interested in moving out of corporate and into the agency, is that I wanted to understand more about digital marketing. At the bottom here, I talk about I created a short course, so that's an accomplishment that I have that I like to talk about. It implies a lot of things about my personality, about my characteristic, and then very clearly explains what I'm looking for out of my next job or my next career move. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how to create your introduction blurb the next time you're asked. During the interview, key things to notice, and I know this is stating the obvious, but when we get nervous and anxious, it can be a very, very easy mistake to make. Listen carefully to what the question is. You know, I think often we'll try and think, as a job seeker sitting at that interview, we'll try and think about what are the things that I want to get across from my experience and my skill set that we actually avoid. We're trying so hard to work that into the conversation that we are thinking of the next question before it's even been asked, and then often miss what the question was. Listen carefully and only answer what you're asked. You know, avoid waffling and adding and embellishing unless you're specifically asked to do that. Answer each question with confidence. So again, this confidence will come from, it'll be inferred, and it'll naturally come if you've done the preparation around matching your skills to the job spec, preparing out loud for all of those tricky interview questions that we know are highly likely to come up. Having practiced our introduction blurb, all of that will display the confidence in the way you answer those questions. Be concise and honest. And friendly. I mean, friendly will come across, and they always say having a smile in your voice. But be concise, and that goes back to listening carefully and actually answering the question that you've been asked. And honest. Never embellish something to the extent that you're being inauthentic about your role, or a role that you played in solving something. It just doesn't make sense to be dishonest in an interview. You're sussing out that company as much as they're sussing out you, and if you're not honest and you're dishonest, you could potentially land the job, but for how long? How long will that be a good environment for you if you weren't honest with each other in that first interview? And ask your prepared questions when the opportunity arises. So, you can work those questions that you want to ask about the role. If learning and development or skills, upskilling is important to you, ask those questions if they come up naturally in the conversation, but generally at the end, you'll be given an opportunity to, are there any questions that you'd like to pose as well? And then I always say keep an interview journal. So I've listed this under during the interview, but you would probably only write in that journal once you've left the interview. But it's important during the interview, I think, to be aware of what parts you're doing well in and where you could do better, so that when you leave that interview, immediately after that interview, go and jot down, what you think went well and what you think didn't go so well, so that the next time you can refer back to it and practice extra pieces. If you feel that your introduction blurb was all over the show, jot that down. If you weren't prepared for the where do you see yourself in 5 years question, jot that down. So you know what to prepare for, and you can just get better and better and better at the interview process as you move on. Okay, that awkward topic of salary, another one that came up in the Q&As. We've got 5 tips to help you navigate the salary discussion. As is always the case, start with research. Empower yourself by knowing what the average salary range is for similar positions in the same industry. So a similar position in different industries can pay very, very differently. I've worked for airlines. I'm now working for online recruitment. I used to work for a network operator, Cell C. Those businesses were incredibly different in terms of their profit margins, their commercial models, etc., etc. So understanding the average salary range for that position in the same industry, location, having that same role in Rustenburg versus Sandton can be very, very different. And obviously the level of experience. So empower yourself by having done that research and understanding what people are, what recruiters are offering for those roles. Know your value. So again, preparing for the interview and knowing what to emphasize during the process that's going to put you forward as a valuable asset. And give examples that show how you're going to add value in this particular role is very, very important. Be confident but realistic. So it is essential to be confident in your abilities and your worth, but also crucial to be realistic. As I've said above, be mindful of the company's budget constraints and industry standards. If you know that industry works on a much smaller profit margin, you can't go in there and demand the same salary for a software developer in a bank, for example. And there's also a difference between, and that's the next point, a difference between working for a big corporate company and an SME or a startup. So, it's not, don't just consider what you're going to get into your bank account at the end of every month. Consider the entire compensation package. Salary is just one component of the total cost to company, the TCC. So always factor in other benefits. Are you getting medical aid or a medical aid contribution? Does the company contribute to a retirement plan. You know, that's all money that you would essentially need to pay out of your take-home amount if you didn't have these additional benefits. Flexible work arrangements, you know, that's a big one for SMEs, for example, that can't necessarily match big corporates on basic salary alone, but they might offer, you know, much more flexible working arrangements, different hours, hybrid working. They might offer more growth and development opportunities, because usually with an SME, you are, you know, it's a much flatter structure, so you get an opportunity to be involved in strategy a lot earlier. Do you get extra days leave? You know, that's essentially a cost to the company. That's money that that they're not adding onto your take-home amount, but it's to your benefit. And then negotiate strategically. You know, if you can, wait until you receive a job offer before discussing compensation. You'll probably know by the stage of the interview roughly, or at the end of this interview, roughly what the salary bracket would be. But, you know, try not to be that person that's saying, and listen, what are you going to pay me? You know, rather use the interview to show that you're enthusiastic about the role and the company. Highlight your skills and your abilities so that it's obvious that you would expect a fair compensation based on that and what you can bring to the role, and then always negotiate respectfully and professionally. And then using the STAR technique during your interview. So this also came up in the Q&As, which is fabulous, because the STAR technique is a really great way of talking through and demonstrating how you've displayed a certain characteristic or skill set. So we recommend following this guide when you're asked to give specific real-world examples. So when you're asked to explain a particular scenario. Again, there would be, you know, common questions that you can expect coming out of an interview. So brainstorm and practice the answers to those potential questions and scenarios, and try and think of personal examples that you can build into the explanations. So I've taken an example here of, you know, the recruiter might ask, take me through a time when you showed innovation in your role. And this is essentially the STAR technique. So you upfront, you've got your, you know, you want to have done your preparation in advance, because in the moment, you will probably have between 5 and 8 seconds to think of a scenario that matches the question that the recruiters asked. So at home, you want to practice 4, 5, 6 scenarios. And depending on what question the recruiter asks, you can just use those couple of seconds to adapt your story, and, you know, and then kind of think about how you're going to work through this this STAR technique. So S stands for situation, as you can see there. What you want to do under the situation is to give the context and the background. So, you know, this is the role I had, and this is where I was working, and this was the kind of the scenario. Moving on to the task. We were faced with this challenge, and you know, as the data analyst in the business, my role was to do XYZ with this challenge. How did you handle that situation? So what kind of action did you take? Well, you know, the first thing I did was I called a meeting with other business analysts in the company and brainstormed XYZ, and then the results. What did you achieve through that process? And coming out of that, you know, I presented 2 solutions to the business that increased something by X percentage or whatever. So to give you a real world example, we're going to talk about a time when somebody showed innovation in their role. In terms of the situation or the context, they can say, I was part of the customer services team. We had poor customer satisfaction scores, and we were receiving lots of complaints due to the inconsistency of our service levels. So I was asked, because I'm one of the most senior team members in customer service, I was asked to propose ideas on how to improve the situation, you know, how to improve that level, that consistency of our service, as well as improve our satisfaction scores and reduce the number of complaints that we received. How did you do that? I first reviewed the results of our customer surveys and then collated the data to understand what customers were saying. I then held a meeting with my peers and asked for their input by brainstorming potential ideas in order to improve, you know, the customer satisfaction scores. And in terms of the results that we achieved, the number of complaints decreased by 20% in the month following, and by 50% 3 months later. So very, very clear story, not a lot of embellished information, really just quite clear to the point, but it works around situation, task, action, results. But you wouldn't necessarily have that information if you hadn't gone and prepared a particular response to this kind of a question. Okay, and then after the interview, again, this came through in the Q&As. What do I do? How do I follow up? Following up is absolutely okay. And the quicker you follow up after that interview, the better. It's always a good idea. It's very, very easy to get the contact details of your interviewer once you've landed up with that interview process. So you could even ask the recruiter at the time of granting the interview, can I have the contact details for, or the name and surname of the person that's interviewing me, because you want to go and do your research on them anyway. So follow up as soon as you can after your interview with a brief message, just expressing that, you are interested in the role, showing gratitude for the opportunity to be interviewed, and just really showing that you're passionate and keen following that interview. Don't call every day asking if you got the job. A lot of the time, so you would have hopefully got that information at the end of your interview. As I said, one of the key questions to ask at the end of your interview, if it's not offered, is what are the next steps in this interview process? So your interviewer could have said, well, I need to take it to my manager. We've got other people to interview, whatever the case may be. We'll get back to you in 2 weeks. Give them 2 weeks. If you haven't heard back by 2 weeks and 1 day, then follow up, and ask if there's any feedback. But don't follow up 2 days later and say, have you got anything? Have you heard anything? So understanding that next step in the process as part of your interview is also very, very key for your follow-ups. If you didn't get the job, let them know that you're still interested. So, if you do hear back from the recruiter and they've declined to move forward with your application, let them know that, again, thank them for the opportunity. Let them know that you are still interested. If something, happens with the process and they are, wanting to revisit you as a candidate, you are happy for that, and ask for feedback. It's always tricky and scary asking for feedback on what we could have done well, but I mean, first of all, you probably are not going to see this person again in your life. And it also does show enthusiasm and ingenuity in terms of taking control of your career path. So it's always fair to ask the recruiter, do you have any information or advice that you could share with me as to what I could have done better in that interview process? Trying to think of an example. Yeah, so I mean, I did have a tricky interview where the person was very negative. We spoke about that earlier. Even if you have had a negative experience, do not bring that into your interview process. And the person that I interviewed, they were dissing by that stage, current employer throughout the process. It just looked like they weren't taking responsibility for anything that had happened in their tenure with that company. Even if that is the truth and that is the case, it's not you. I used to have a manager that said, never bring problems, never come to me with problems, always come to me with solutions. And that's kind of the same thing is, you want to say, I'm not comfortable in this role because X, Y, and Z, but I know that, even through that negative experience, I've learned X, Y, and Z. So when that person contacted me to find out why they, weren't moving forward, as difficult as it is for me as well, or for the recruiter in that instance, it can be very awkward for them. But I also wanted to help that person, be better at the interview process moving forward. And then what's done is done. So this is good old William Shakespeare. And I mean, William Shakespeare said a lot of amazing things, but don't obsess about the process. If the interview didn't go well, or you feel you could have answered something differently, make that note in your journal. Be better prepared for the next one, but don't obsess about, I should have said this, I should have said that. It's happened. It's over. It's in the past. We can only learn from it and hope to be better the next time around. It's also important right after the interview, I think, to take a mental break from the process. You would have done a lot of preparation, hopefully, done a lot of preparation up to this point. And and then sitting in that interview, being switched on the whole time, you know, having your prepared information in the back of your head, being prepared for those 10, 15% curveballs. It is an exhausting process. So take a mental break. Don't overanalyze every single thing that happened with that interview. Rather focus on the big picture, you know. Focus on what you did well and what you learned from that process, as opposed to that one question that you didn't nail or do as well as you wanted to. And as I said, always jot down straight after the interview, you know, what you could have done better, but don't overanalyze it there and then. Select maybe 1 or 2 key takeaways that are going to help you be better at the interview process moving forward, and then move on. Always pursue other possibilities for multiple reasons. The first one is that, you know, I see a lot of people that I've done it myself a million times in my career, is you have a great interview and you think, I've absolutely nailed this. This job is completely mine. And then you wait, and then you wait, and you don't hear back from anybody. And then eventually you do hear back, and they've decided not to move forward with you. It is, first of all, it doesn't feel good. And it also means that you are not open to other possibilities in that process. So sometimes that's 2, 3, 4 weeks that you'll go from interview to finding out that you're not moving forward. Always pursue other opportunities, regardless of where you are. You know, until you have a contract in front of you, consider it that you're open and available to any jobs. And also pursuing other opportunities and possibilities helps you practice your interview skills. And it is something that you can learn to be more comfortable with. Move past this interview and be stronger for the next one. So yeah, don't obsess. Dealing with anxiety, I always say a good laugh and a long sleep are the 2 best cures for anything. I personally live by this. Feeling good, having a walk, clearing your head, doing a workout, just moving past, what might have been a terrible interview. It might have been a good interview, but you've been so entrenched in that process that, you know, you're on edge and your nerves are shot. So go exercise, go see your friends. So we often say go see your friends and not your family, because your family will ask you the hard questions. How did it go? What did you say? Did you tell them about this? As your friends will maybe gloss over it and probably move on to another topic. And you don't want to dwell on the interview too long. You know, if you've taken your interview journal, jot it down where you can improve, move past the interview. And then go and focus your brain power elsewhere. You know, go and read an easy to read book or watch a cheesy reality TV show. Just take some downtime. Let your brain rest and sleep. I mean, sleep is just, for me, the best thing in the world. Everything looks better in the morning. You know, if you're tired and cranky, and it's gonna mess with your anxiety and your mental health as well. So try and get a good night's sleep, move past the interview, and hope for better luck the next time. So hopefully this has given you some good tips and some good advice. We do have a couple of resources that I want to share here that also dive into more information about interviews, but also, you know, what happens before the interview. So, you know, how to set up a good PNET profile that's going to be attractive to recruiters. And then moving past, you know, once you've landed the job, how do you handle your first month? How do you read your pay slip and all those sort of things? So we do have this resource for graduates. If you go to pnet.co.za/blog/grad pack, and you can download the content there. We've also recently introduced our Job Scoop newsletter on LinkedIn. So you can go to the PNET LinkedIn page, and you'll see on the left-hand side there what newsletters we've published. And this is really just giving you tips and tools as a job seeker about, how to navigate the world of work across multiple topics. We had quite excitedly, we had our first social media live stream, so also under the banner of the Job Scoop, week before last, on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And the topic there was from seen to hired. So we spoke all about how to create an online job seeker profile that gets you noticed. How do recruiters recruit? How can you make sure that your PNET profile is aligned to what recruiters are looking for and how they find talent? We are probably going to do our next live stream in about October. So follow us on the socials. Yeah, either catch us live and get involved in the Q&A sessions there, or you can play recordings of those sessions as well. We do have a support email address if you're having any challenges with your PNET profile itself, support@pnet.co.za. And then we've got a number of PNET blogs. I've just pulled out these 4 that talk about the interview process specifically. So 6 do's and don'ts during the job interview, 7 steps to take before your next interview, 4 steps to take after your interview, mastering the art of the interview. So if you go onto the PNET website, scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see in the footer there's a link there for a job seeker blog. And you can go and scroll through our blogs and see what content there is relevant to the interview process and get some additional tips through that. Okay, so we've come to the Q&A session. Lisa, how are we doing for time? We're pretty much out.
Sorry, Michelle, it is now 1:15. So maybe let's just hear if there are any live questions so that we can attend to those. And then we'll see how the time goes.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to just activate all the microphones. So if you have a question to ask Michelle live, please do so. Just raise your hand on Teams. Just click on the raise icon on your screen so that we can then call you to ask your question. Colin, your hand is up. You're welcome to unmute and ask your question. Colin Jabulani.
All right. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Short, and thank you for the wonderful presentation, Michelle. I just wanted to know regarding the CVs, times are changing and then templates are also changing. And then also in terms of the number of pages, I also have gotten information that it must be as short as possible. What can you advise in terms of the template and also the number of pages thereof? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Yeah, great question. I'm not going to spend too much time on it here because it's not directly linked to the interview process. It's kind of happens before the interview process. And again, we do have a couple of blogs on CVs, and we've got a CV template on our in our PNET blog section as well. Yes, absolutely, short and sweet. So no, I mean, my CV, for example, with 27 years experience is 2 pages long. You want to be able to give a short summary of, we call it your elevator pitch, so in sales, the term elevator pitch is that one sentence that sells your product or your service. So what is your one sentence that demonstrates what you want out of your career and what value you can bring? So you want your elevator pitch. You don't need to include personal details in your CV. You talk about the format changing. That's a very, very good point. If you're uploading your CV to an online recruitment platform, whether it's PNET or any of the other platforms, making it look really awesome and pretty and using design and putting photos in is actually not going to work to your advantage. Recruiters use something called an application tracking system, an ATS, which I'm not going to go into too much detail about, but essentially it's a piece of software that will crawl over your CV and pull out keywords. So your format needs to be in PDF or Word. You want to make your content as easy to understand as possible. If you've got heavy design in there or heavy images, it's going to make that process of trawling your CV more difficult. So if you think about how Google trawls the websites, the internet when you're looking for, you know, a particular keyword or search term. The ATS does that for CVs. So make sure, so don't worry too much about how it looks, rather worry about the quality of the content that's in your CV. The objective of your CV is to get to the interview stage. So you don't have to include all of your information in your CV. Skills, you absolutely want to list skills. We do a whole section about skills. It was actually in the recent live stream that we did on PNET about listing your skills in your profile, your PNET profile. Skills next to qualifications is becoming a very soft skills as well as hard and technical skills, becoming a very, very important part of recruiting. So you definitely want to highlight your skills in your CV. You want to make sure you're listing your experience as well as your qualifications or your studies in a reverse chronological order, so that the latest is always at the top. Yeah, I think that's probably the best response at the moment. There is a lot around CV. So again, I would say, you know, if you can follow us on socials and look out for our next, probably a live stream after the next one will be dedicated to CVs. And then we can share a lot of tips there, or go check out our blogs and our template.
Thank you, Michelle. There was just a question on the chat about
Thank you very much, Michelle. That was insightful.
Okay, great. Thanks, Colin.
Thanks, Colin. There's a question on the chat from Colifelo who's asking about the importance of do you need to adjust your CV according to each and every position that you're applying to? What is your advice in terms of that?
Yeah, great question. The answer is yes, a resounding yes. So similarly to the way that I explained, you know, you want to, when you've got a job description and you're preparing for your interview, you want to go and look at that job description and talk about how you have those skills, those requirements. Different companies and different industries use different terminology. So if you're applying for a particular company or a particular sector, so if I was applying for airlines versus network operator versus online recruitment, I would choose or explain the skills or the value that I can add very differently for each of those industries. So even though the core or the crux of your CV will stay the same, it's important to go and use the same words, phrases, terminology that particular industry or company are using, so that it's the same with your cover letter, you know, so that when the recruiter is looking through your CV, they're kind of picking up all these keywords and nodding and going, oh yes, yeah, okay, this, you know, this guy's definitely, I definitely want to put that on the short list because I can see that they understand what, you know, what we're looking for out of this particular role. So yeah, it is a really good idea to just have a squiz through your CV and update those key phrases and terminology.
Thank you, Michelle. Dalita, your hand is up. You're welcome to unmute and ask your question. I saw you drop your hand. I'm not sure if you still want to ask, Dalita.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I think I've been in a position where the employer, our request your current payslip in order for you to give you an offer. I think it's kind of biased, but my question is like, is it a must to give the employer, the future employer, your current payslip during the salary negotiations?
Yeah, also a really, really good question. I mean, I don't know if it's an absolute must, you know, can you refuse? Probably. Will it go down well? Probably not. It's always so tricky when a recruiter, you know, usually the person asking for your salary slip, to be perfectly honest, is the recruiter, not the hiring manager. It's the HR person that's been given that salary range to work with. So I think it's fair to share your current pay slip. But if you are looking for an increase that's well beyond just enough to make you move or to encourage you to move, you need to be able to motivate why are you, why are you, so let's say you'd move for an extra 10%, but actually you don't believe you were being paid fair and adequately in the first place. You need to be able to motivate and demonstrate that. So I think that the answer to that question, first of all, starts in the interview process. If you've sat with that hiring manager in your interview, you've done your research, you've presented your skills and your qualifications, and you've given them enough reason to understand why you would be how you would add value to the role and why you would be a good employee for this particular business. If you're asking for an additional, motivating for an additional salary over and above, that little extra margin to move, that is something that's definitely going to be considered by your hiring manager based on the fact that you've indicated and shown in your interview that you are worth that extra 5 or 10% over and above. So I think sharing your current salary is one thing, but then motivating in your salary negotiation is absolutely, you're well within your rights to do that, as long as I mentioned, as long as you are professional and respectful in that process. I'll give you an example. I moved from I was working for a digital marketing agency, very, very small profit margins. As I grew, I'd come from big corporates, so they did struggle to pay what I was looking for in the first place. But I moved there specifically because I wanted to learn more about digital marketing, and we had a good understanding that they would teach me about digital marketing and I would teach them about broader marketing strategy. So I didn't move for a financial reason. I moved for a different reason. But so then when it came to move away from the agency to my next role, it was 3 or 4 years later, and I was now presenting my salary slip for a job that was well below market value for my role. And so I said that. I positioned it as such. Every year that went on in that agency, they couldn't afford to give me an increase that I was looking for. So I got extra leave days. So when it came to motivating for, my next corporate salary, I was able to explain all of that and say, this is the market related salary for where I would have been if I'd stayed with corporates. This is what I've learned in the process. This is the value I can bring to the conversation, having learned, more about the digital marketing function from these guys, et cetera, et cetera. So always go back to motivating why you're a good fit for that particular role and how you can add value in that role better than the next candidate. And then the salary conversation, it won't be a non-negotiable. There generally is a decent range for a recruiter to work within.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lita.
Okay, there's a question about the on the job advert. Does the recruiter set questions from job requirements or the job duties? And then a further question to that I'm thinking about, is that also what they would use to structure the questions for the interviews? So how does all of that fit together?
Yeah, so your job requirements would essentially, your job description is based, or your job advert is generally based on the job requirements and the duties. So remember, your requirements would be, your duties would be your tasks. It's usually listed as responsibilities in a job description, and your requirements would be over and above that. So usually there's some sort of minimum qualification. There are specific skills that person needs to display. So I think those 3 sections generally make up a good job advert. What are the actual technical requirements of the job, which would be your functions or your tasks? What are the additional skills that person would need? And often, as I say, we just did a nice big section on skills in our last live stream. But skills, job seekers often make the mistake of limiting their skills to their computer skills or to their hard skills, their qualifications or their technical skills. Soft skills, more and more recruiters are recruiting on soft skills aligned to qualifications and experience. So focus on skills when you're preparing your online profiles. Focus on skills when you're preparing your CVs. Focus on skills when you're talking through the value that you can bring to a specific company. So skills will be a requirement as well, and getting across this. So for example, a project manager, you need to be organized. That would be a skill that you want to demonstrate. I'm very organized. I'm a self-starter. I'm a critical thinker, so I can understand risks as a project manager. What are the skills that particular job or industry or sector would need you to have, and make sure that you're addressing those skills in your interview process, along with your qualifications and your hard or technical skills. Don't know if that answers that question. Does the recruiter set questions? Oh yeah, so the second part of that question is absolutely. They would take those 3 sections: qualifications, skills, and technical requirements, and prepare your interview on that basis. Well, a good recruiter would hopefully prepare that interview on that basis. I've sat in some horrendous interviews where it was very clear the recruiter hadn't taken the time to even set the questionnaire or prepare what they wanted to ask. Again, a big red flag for me when it comes to, does this company feel like a good fit for me, or does this person, if they're going to be the person I report into, is that a personality that I can work with? The answer is no for me. Some people might be more easygoing, but you can also get a good sense from how prepared the interviewer is for your interview session as to the culture of the company or the working environment for that particular department.
Thanks, Michelle. Dapewa, you've got your hand up. You're welcome to unmute and ask your question.
Good afternoon, Michelle.
Hello.
And colleagues. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the platform, and thank you for the presentation. It was very insightful. My question, it's about during the interview. There was a time that I was invited for an interview, but the minimum requirement for that position, they put the lower qualifications, that I only apply with the lowest qualification because that was the requirement. Because there are sometimes that you can apply for a position or you want to be promoted, but the moment you put the higher qualifications, of course, they will not shortlist you. But my question is now, is it right for me to put or to talk about my highest qualification for the position while I did not include it in the application? Is it correct to talk about it? Let me say, for instance, if they ask for a bachelor, but now I'll put in a master's degree or an honors degree, but the minimum requirement for the positions, it was just a bachelor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. My personal opinion would be to include your highest qualification on your profile, on your CV, in your interview process. As I say, recruiters are more and more recruiters are looking for skills beyond just qualifications. So even though you potentially, even if you have a master's degree, demonstrating that you have the skills and the right personality or characteristics or soft skills to add value in that role is, for me, going to be far more important than talking through what that, if you've got something more than the minimum requirement, then talk about the skills and what you're looking for out of that career. So it's possibly linked to the question that you're asking is being overlooked because somebody thinks you might get bored in that position because you are
they will definitely say that you are overqualified.
Yeah. So if you're going into, so I definitely would never hide. If I had a master's degree, I would flash it everywhere if I could. You don't want to hide behind your qualifications or try and engineer your qualifications to suit the job spec. But if you know that is going to be something that's going to be questioned, address it up front. Don't wait for the recruiter to say, but wait a minute, you've got this master's degree and it's an entry-level position. Or so in your cover letter, for example, say, even though I have a master's degree over and above the minimum qualification, I'm keen to learn, I'm keen to grow, I'm keen to, get the basics right. However you land up phrasing that. And then reiterate that in your interview process as well. Say, I do have a master's degree. I know you are only asking for X, Y, Z, but I'm hungry for the work. I'm keen to learn. You know, I want to start at the bottom and work my way up. Something to that effect. So I think to answer your question succinctly, I would definitely share all of the qualifications you have that are relevant. But if you know it's going to be a challenge or something that's going to potentially knock you out of the running, address it up front so that they know that you know that you might be overqualified for the role, but you still want it anyway.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle. I guess that advice is applicable to anything that you think might be like a pain point for the recruiter. So it could range anything from maybe you changing not just industries, but you changing like the whole career field, you know. So how do you address that? How do you help the recruiter to understand what it is that you are looking for and what it is that you can bring? Yeah,
absolutely. I agree with that. I think it goes back to preparation, you know, prepare. What are the questions that you might get asked? Oh, wait a minute. I see you've got a year in your CV that's unaccounted for. What happened there? Rather, if you know that question is going to come up, rather address that year, you know, address a change in industry, address an overqualification, a potential qualification concern. Yeah, 100% agree. Those pain points should become part of your, you know, what tricky questions can I expect, and address them upfront before the recruiter has to.
Michelle, is it okay if we keep you maybe for another 10 minutes or so? There's just 2 questions on the chat.
Yes, I think so. Let me just check.
Okay?
Yeah, no, I'm perfect until 2 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay. Tabi Singh is asking, she gives a scenario about going for an interview for a PA position, but they sideline you because of your age, but give you an offer as a financial advisor, which you have no experience in. So how would you handle something like that?
I'm not entirely sure, to be perfectly honest. So when you say sidelined you because of your age, I'm guessing that they assumed you were too young, but then they've given you a financial advisor offer as an entry level. I mean, I think it's such a specific question, Tabi Singh. I'm not sure if I could answer that, but I think if you were specifically looking for that PA, it depends what your career trajectory is or what your career path is. And I think you'd need to be very clear in that interview process, you know, why you've applied for the PA position versus the financial advisor position. You would need to make that decision based on what you want out of your career moving forward. Because again, it's, you know, the one you're inexperienced in, but you've got lots of room to grow. A PA role, you know, it might be that they're looking for somebody who's not going to want to climb the corporate ladder in 3 or 4 years' time, and then they're potentially looking for a PA again. I know that often happens with receptionist kind of roles or PA roles where they're worried that the person's going to be ambitious. We want them to be ambitious, and therefore will land up leaving them with a vacancy in a short period anyway. So I think, you know, if you say how to handle that, my only advice there would be to understand what you want out of that process, and make sure you stick to your guns in terms of that career path that you want to take.
Thanks, Michelle. There's a question about it's quite common to take online courses like those on Coursera. Does it make sense to mention those during or before the interview? How seriously do employers generally take these courses? And if it can be added, under which circumstances?
Yeah, thanks. Susan, that's a great question. So learning agility is one of the soft skills that are coming up more and more with recruiters. There's recruiters in today's age, when it comes to soft skills, the key ones are learning agility. In other words, continuous learning. Are you able to stay up to date and on top of information past your official qualification? So that links 100% to your question, so I'll come back to it. Critical thinking is a big one, your ability to demonstrate your ability to think critically. Adaptability, just because, the way the world moves so quickly, recruiters are looking for people who are able to adapt to changing environments, changing situations, new software, et cetera. So learning agility is definitely, there's a fourth one, I can't remember. Adaptability, critical thinking, learning agility. But yeah, learning agility is a big one. So learn, and, having a qualification is absolutely going to set you up for your career path moving forward. But I'll take my career, for example. I did a marketing qualification a bajillion years ago. It is probably 80%, maybe 70% irrelevant in today's world of marketing. So even though my qualification has set me up really well for my career path, understanding the psychology of branding, there's some core principles in marketing that will never change. But the world of marketing and navigating marketing channels has changed so much over the last 2 decades that it's been absolutely necessary for me to do courses like Coursera, Udemy, etc. And often those courses they can't be introduced into formal qualifications because they change again so quickly. So learning agility, staying on top of trends in your industry, absolutely makes sense. 100% behind upskilling, and you can do it relatively inexpensively with these online courses like Coursera and Udemy and all the rest. If it's something that's going to hold more value, then getting a kind of a proper tertiary qualification in that obviously makes a lot more sense. But I wouldn't necessarily mention those courses on a CV. Your CV can become quite long. I suppose it depends how many courses you've done, but your CV can become quite long. But you want to demonstrate those under your skills and your abilities. So I wouldn't necessarily talk about it under the qualifications or the education component of your CV, but you want to introduce the fact that, you have done this entry-level project management course because so you now have these skills where you can put together a project plan and allocate budget and things like that. So whatever the skills are, whether they're technical skills or soft skills that you're learning out of those kind of courses, list those on your CV and talk about those at your interview. And also taking on that kind of upskilling for your own personal development shows a lot of ingenuity with a candidate. It shows that they are in control of their career, they have a clear career path, they're prepared to go above and beyond, they're prepared to take control of their career rather than kind of sit passively and just meet the job requirements. So I would absolutely work it into a CV or a profile as a skill or as skills, and I would talk it through in your interview process for sure. How seriously do employers take it? They take it seriously. Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. There's one more hand, so let's make that the last live question. Epodia, you're welcome to unmute and ask your question. Okay, it could be that she's got a problem with the microphone.
With the mic, yeah.
Okay, then just maybe this last question on the chat about Chandra is asking, as a graduate that has not yet received my certificate, am I able to use my final results as proof of my degree, or do I have to wait for my letter of completion?
I think it would be different depending on, it would depend on the company that you would be, that's advertising for a vacancy or has a vacancy. I know some companies are absolutely unwilling to move to the next step without that confirmation. Celsi, for example, when I was working for Celsi, we interviewed somebody who was waiting for the results, and Celsi just would not accept that candidate as a shortlist as a result. But so I'm not sure it's possible to answer that question. I would say crack on, continue putting your profile out there, sign up for job alerts, whatever it is. In other words, actively pursue employment without that letter of completion, and you will find out very, very early in the process whether that's something that you have to wait for, or if you can continue without it for the meantime. And yeah, it's something you can explain. So I definitely wouldn't hold back on moving forward without it.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so we've come to the end of the session. I've just posted some resources. There's a screenshot of the PNet Grad Pack publication that Michelle has mentioned. And there's also another book called the Grad X book. It's also, both of these are available free of charge. So please just go and take a look at more detailed information about interview skills, but also more broadly than that, CV writing, networking, branding, and everything that you need actually to prepare for future opportunities. Then I've also posted our contact details, so you're welcome to get in touch with us if you would want to have more individual conversations about your employability skills or your career planning. So please send us an email or make an online appointment or contact a student counselor at a Unisa centre closest to you. On our website as well as on our YouTube channel, a lot of resources that you can use. We will be sending you an email to notify you that the recording for this session today is published on Teams, but we will also publish an edited version on our YouTube channel. So with that, I'm just going to ask Becky, would you just end off the session for us? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. As we come to the end of this enlightening Career Talk event, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Michelle on behalf of my colleagues. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing your time and expertise with us, helping us to understand today's topic. Your presentation was inspiring and engaging. The examples that you shared were practical, which made the presentation more real and effective. I'm of the view that this is one of the most interesting topics for our students based on the high number of questions asked and high attendance. I'm certain that our students benefited greatly from your knowledge. Your contribution is highly valued. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you. To our students, thank you for your enthusiastic participation in making this event interactive and engaging. We hope the insights gained today will help you in your job hunting journey. Once again, thank you all for being here today. We hope you leave with wealth of knowledge and inspiration. We look forward to seeing you at our future events. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Michelle, again.
Thank you.
We will see you again. And for students, please keep a lookout on the Unisa events calendar. For future events, there will be a couple of events until the middle of September. Thank you very much. Have a great day.